This is not just a build, it's a build battle build. A few weeks ago I bumped into Cyclon, another content creator for Pathofexile. His videos are superb. We decided it'd be a really fun idea to do something that no one else has done before. Challenge each other to a build battle. The idea here is that we pick a goal for a build, and then we build that build in just a couple of weeks around a set of restrictions. The goal for this build is clear speed. Nothing else matters, we have to clear the maps as quickly as possible. The primary restriction on this build was a non-meta build. The idea was to play a skill that less than 1% of players were playing. This instantly makes the challenge much greater because there's a reason that skills aren't played. To compound this, we can't use transfigured versions of the gems. And just in case you thought we weren't masochistic enough, we aren't allowed to spend any more than 20 divines on the build. The last restriction was we couldn't just pump skills onto the passive skill tree to get out of any ruts. We are sticking to a cap of level 92. Now I've got to admit, I'm a teeny bit nervous. Cyclon is an absolute veteran of Pathofexile, but our fates are now in your hands. You see, the choice of the best build battle is down to you. At the end of the video, there will be a link to Cyclon's build battle build guide. Try and say that 10 times fast. Once you've watched both videos and decided on whose build is best, check out the description of either video and select the community post which holds the poll. Then go and vote for your favourite build. Remember that the goal of this build is clear speed. And yes, I'm getting in my excuses early. To make it a little easy for you to choose, we have decided that most of the maps here will be white, except for the tier 17. We're also going to run common things such as Legion. There is also one map in the mix that is Delirium. This map is 8% Delirium throughout. And I die quite a few times in this map, but not because the build is bad, because I happen to spawn 2 bosses. What are the chances? The game hates me. Straight into the guide now, and first the offences. This build uses Ice-shot, and that has 2 attack vectors. One is the arrow that actually hits, and 2 is the area effect created by the arrow hitting. This build is really heavy crit with about 45% chance to crit, and that's without any of our power charges. To make sure we have maximum clearage, I also use Awakened Chain. This causes our attack to chain between enemies. This causes the area of effect to happen multiple times within a pack. On top of this, we use Herald of Ice. This causes shattered enemies, i.e. frozen killed, to explode, dealing damage around them. I also use a set of artillery ballistas just to apply extra damage to bosses. It also has a culling strike link to help finish people off. And now for the defences of this build. This build has 2 defences as a bonus. One is your positioning. You move around the field to make yourself harder to hit. Also, you attack from as far away as possible, meaning melee hits just don't hit you. And to stop those blighters having a chance, you use chill to slow them down or freeze to stop them in their tracks. Cold really is a great defensive layer on absolutely any build. Now if I was just to rely on positioning and chill alone, I would be dead a lot, because I'm terrible at dodging. So to help us out even more, we have 100% spell suppression and 78% chance to evade attacks. Our final layer of defense comes in the form of regen. We use Leech, and a lot of it. What is the cost of the build? I spent 14 divines and 25 chaos to actually buy gear, but I did also craft some stuff myself. There is no way this used up the rest of the currency, but it would have had a cost. Probably the most expensive thing I crafted was the cluster jewel. The base of the cluster jewel itself was just a single chaos. As far as crafting goes, I was pretty lucky, so I don't think I spent any more than 1 divine on the cluster jewel. I'm also using a brutal restraint jewel that I dropped in a 5-way. I didn't price check this, but it's certainly not optimal for the build. Anything with strength would have been better. That said, it did give us extra life, so it's a bonus. On to the Ascendancy now, and we are a Deadeye. All our skill points are offensive. The first point goes into Gathering Winds. This basically gives us increased action speed. This means we run and attack faster. The next point goes into Ricochet. This gives us +1 chain and allows us to chain off terrain. Along with our Awakened Chain support, this gives us 4 chains between enemies. It also means that in boss fights, if we hit the arena, there is a 30% chance that they will ricochet off the wall and hit the boss. The penultimate point goes into Endless Munitions. This gives us 2 additional projectiles. Along with the 2 we get on the tree and the 1 we get off the character by default, this gives us a total of 5. Note, because we use Sniper's Mark, if we hit a cursed enemy, they will split towards 2 additional targets. The last Ascendancy point goes into Focal Point. This increases the power of our marks. Our 2-way splits now become 3-way splits, meaning even more projectiles. As a nice little bonus, once our marked enemy dies, the mark will transfer to another enemy nearby automatically. Now Sniper's Mark also gives us extra damage, which is increased by the 75%. For our 6th link, we use Ice-shot, linked to increase critical strike and increase critical damage. Critical strikes on this build are really important because they cause enemies to be frozen. Also, we have just under 300% increased damage with critical strikes. This means it's almost triple damage. Our next link is Awakened Chain. You can get away with a normal chain, but it'll only be 2 chains instead of 3. Our 5th link is Elemental Damage with attacks. This increases elemental damage with attacks, and we're a cold build, so that's good. Our final link is Awakened Added Cold Damage. Note that throughout filming this video, this skill gem did not exceed level 2, meaning I did not get the +1 to the skill gem bonus. This does mean that the build is not yet at full power, and will be once those gems level. Onto the support gems now, and our first support link is Artillery Blisters linked to Hypothermia, Culling Strike and added lightning damage. In our bow, which only needs to be a 4 link, we have Herald of Ice, Grace, and Hatred linked to Enlighten. My Enlighten is only level 2. In the unlinked slots of the bow, I have 2 movement skills. The first is Frost Blink, and the second is Blink Arrow. These do not share a cooldown, so can be used consecutively. If the movement skills feel a little bit sluggish, then switch out Frost Blink for Flame Dash. It will give you more consecutive hits. This, of course, is a trade-off, so you will lose damage. Our final 4 link is all about sustaining power and frenzy charges. For this, we use Frenzy linked to Mana-Forged Arrows, Power Charge on Critical Strike, and Life Tap. Mana-Forged Arrows actually cast Frenzy for us. These then give us power charges when we crit. Life Tap then just allows us to use our life to cast it, so it's up way more often. Do note that this does 60% of its damage as physical. I found this out the hard way in a Fizz Reflect map. To avoid doing anything stupid like me, what you probably want to do is change out Life Tap to physical damage to lightning. This will massively reduce the incoming physical damage and we won't one-shot ourselves. In my boots, I split the skill gems into 2 groups. The first is defensive, and it's Immortal Call linked to cast when damage taken. Note that this build does not have endurance charges. If I had more skill points, I would be pathing towards getting some. Endurance charges will increase the length of time that this buff is up, but also just give us generally better defenses. The final 2 link is Sniper's Mark linked to Mark on Hit. This simply puts Sniper's Mark on any rare enemy we hit, and it does it without us having to press a button, which is a bonus. The skill tree on this is pretty straightforward. It's a pretty standard archer build. The things you want to path to first are Multi-Shot and Master Fletcher. This will give us 2 extra projectiles when we have both of them. You also want to get Thrill of the Battle early, along with 12% increased mana reservation efficiency on the mastery. The other mastery you want to get as quickly as possible is the 40% of physical damage converted to cold damage. And on the way to getting this, you want to get as much life as possible. It's now time to go over the gear selections, and then I'm going to tell you what I think about this build. This build uses 3 unique items. Heat Shiver, this gives us cold damage as extra fire. The Taming, this is just a really good all-round ring. The key roll on it is 30% increased elemental damage with hits and ailments for each type of elemental ailment on enemy. We have all 3, which is 90%. And last, but by no means least, here is Ire for the chest. This gives us a huge flat cold damage roll for bow skills. For the bow, the best in slot is going to be a rare. You want as much flat physical damage on it as possible, as this will all be converted to cold. We also want to get +2 to level of socketed bow gems, a cold damage roll if you can get it, and then crit strike and crit multi. Attack speed is a bonus. My bow is by no means optimal. You can get much better, but not for the budget. For the rest of the gear, we're going to get as much life as possible. We're going to cap off resistances. We then need to go for any strength and intelligence so we can roll the 2 nodes near the starting area off the tree. And after this, we want to make sure our spell suppression is capped off at 100%. And then we want to stack an absolute ton of evasion. And that's really all you're looking for on the rest of the gear. For flasks, as well as a life flask, we are using a quartz flask for spell suppression, a quicksilver to move fast, a granite flask for armor, and then a jade flask for evasion. For the life flask, I just went for a divine with anti-bleed on it. We deal a lot of critical strikes, so if we can get a chance to gain a flask charge when we deal a critical strike on our flasks, that's a huge bonus. For leveling the build, do not use Ice-shot. I did this, it's a terrible, terrible idea, even with leveling gear. Instead, use Poisonous Concoction or Rain of Arrows. Either will be a ton better than Ice-shot. Okay, so what do I think of the build? Well, this is not my normal build. This is all about clear speed, and I normally go for more survivable than this. That said, clear speed can be bloody good fun. I've actually really enjoyed playing it. There's something deeply reassuring about exploding huge screens worth of monsters. On the con side of the build, bossing is truly atrocious. Tier 16 bosses are absolutely fine, but the moment you get to tier 17 or higher, they're just not pleasant at all. And in fact, I die so many times it isn't funny. Now if you have the skill of someone like Mathel, this is probably absolutely fine, but I don't. Would I try this build in solo self-found? Absolutely not. 3 uniques are going to be so hard to find. Would I league start it? No, I wouldn't touch it with a barge pole. So when would I play this build? I'd play it as a second character when I just want really fast clear and I have another build for bossing. Now, am I done with this build? No, I'm probably going to play it a little bit more and see if I can improve it. With much higher investment, I believe we could get it to kill bosses as well. We might need a gem swap though, and if that's the case, I really am not into it. Well, what do you think of our first build battle? Let me know in the comments below. And please do go and check out Cyclon's video, it's top left now, and then after that, go and vote on who you think is the winner. If you've come to my video from Cyclon's, then please remember to vote. But first, check out the video top right, which will show you how I craft my cluster jewels. And with that, thank you for watching, and may the RNG be with you.